everybody. Welcome to this webinar from the Community Engagement Mission Action Team of the Diocese of Wisconsin. I'm Father Dave Mowers, the convener of the Mission Action Team, and we're here with our friends, authors Joy Skjegstad and Heidi Unruh, who are with us in the spring for a webinar, and they're back tonight with community ministry in the small church. So we've got about a 45-minute presentation or so, and then for the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So Joy and Heidi, you can take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Or maybe you're watching this at a different time, so good day. We really like working with small churches and feel like they can make a huge impact in the community. So one of our, what do I click on again? It's been a
View.
while.
Go to view.
Yep. Slideshow. Okay, got it. And we have seen it and have hopes for small churches making a big impact in the community. We always want to be an encouragement around that because we feel like small churches, some at least, might have like an inferiority complex and think, well, we don't have a lot of people, we don't have a lot of money, so really what can we do? And we've seen really creative things happen through partnership, through taking a long look at what assets your church really has and building on those, and thinking creatively about the kinds of resources that might be available to you, thinking about money, in-kind donations that can make really creative community ministry possible. So here's about me and how to get me on email. I do a lot of work with startups and nonprofits and churches that are working to turn around. And I really like doing strategic planning in particular. And I've been fundraising since 1987. So I don't really know how not to do fundraising. So anyway, we're just going to talk about that a little bit tonight. And these are the 3 books that I wrote on my own. So these 2 are still in print. This one's available as an ebook. So this one is a good handbook if you're thinking about grants, like foundation, corporate, business, service club grants for your ministry.
Hey, and this is me. I'm coming to you from Kansas, Hutchinson, Kansas, as you can tell by the sunflower over my head. And Joy and I have run in different circles, but we really felt this kinship around community ministry, our love for the local congregation, and like Joy said, our deep belief that it's not the traditional measures of people and places, facilities that God measures in terms of being able to make an impact in the community. But that small churches have everything that they need. And we'll talk about that more. Some of my passions are community coalition building, community development, doing justice work, and trauma-informed ministry with vulnerable families and youth. So next slide shows my books, a lot on the church and engaging in outreach. And this is the book that Joy and I wrote together during COVID. So we were pretty crazy, but we felt like God just put it on us to say the church is not closed, and ministry is not shut down. And so we still believe that very firmly. And even though there's very different, life looks very different now, but we still believe that connections, relational connections are at the heart of community ministry. So the focus here is on how your church, your small church, however you define that, can step into impactful community ministry and have an oversized impact in your community. And we're going to do this next slide through these topics. So these are the starting places that we recommend for stepping into community ministry. Discovering your assets, learning more about the community, how to energize your members, and how to develop resources. Um, the challenge for Joy and I was to take the gallons of PowerPoint slides and trainings that we've done and kind of condense it to the essence of what we want to share with you about moving forward in community ministry. So, I'm going to try not to talk too long. And Joy is very good about telling me, waving her arms and saying, hey, stop talking about this. We need to move on. But the reality is that we really could offer a lot more information on any of these topics and more. So we really love if you have any questions at all after watching this, please be in touch with us. So our first topic is to discover your assets. That's a really hard word to say with braces, so forgive me if I don't say it correctly. So the question is, what has God given your church to work with? So we believe that every church has an abundance of assets. Next slide. So as Joy mentioned, oftentimes small churches get judged or feel keenly aware of what are perceived deficiencies. But we believe that small churches have unique gifts and strengths for community ministry. Next one. So just to explore a few of these, in many smaller congregations, they're a little more nimble. They have streamlined their processes. So gone from having a crowded organizational chart in some large churches, but in a small church where people know each other, where people have been working together for a long time, they can make decisions faster. Sometimes, not always. There are more opportunities to develop lay leadership, which is critical both for the congregation and for working in community ministry. So everybody sort of has this mindset of we're all going to shoulder and carry our weight. Next slide.
Mhm.
And that gives the congregation a higher level of ownership. So in churches that have a lot of staff, it may be easy to say community ministry is so-and-so's job. Or I don't have to worry about it because it's this committee over here is going to take care of that. But in a smaller church, everybody knows that the mission of the church is everybody's mission. And next. This is important to us to note that in smaller churches, ministry can be more inclusive of everyone's gifts, because you know each other better, because frankly, you use what you have on the table. So everybody is seen as having a contribution, a God-given contribution to ministry and the community. And I just want to note, my husband pastored a small church for about 10 years here, and I know that not everything we say about applies to every small church. But take all the encouraging stuff that we say and take that to heart. All right, so we encourage churches to take stock of your assets for community ministry because you have more than you might think. And this picture comes from a camp that does upcycling. So what they use, their resource in this camp is basically trash. What we consider trash, because everybody has an abundance of toilet paper tubes and old pens. So it's be creative in your mindset to look at things that you might not have considered as an asset to say, how can God use this small loaf or this small fish in ministry? Next. So what often comes to mind is physical assets. And so churches have kitchens, gyms, meeting space, parking lots. They have equipment for They have media, sound equipment, instruments. So all the things that churches have, often they're used on Sunday morning, but maybe stand empty the rest of the week. So to kind of put on your asset lenses to say, how might this space, if we open it up to the community, um, how might this space make a difference where we are? We also really emphasize looking at individual assets. And so these are the assets of people in your church. And again, it can be helpful for individual congregants who might think, oh, I don't have a lot of time. I don't really have a professional experience in ministry. But if you frame it as, what do you what do you know how to do well enough that you could teach somebody else? What's an experience in life that you've had that would give you empathy for others? What do you really love to do? What do you enjoy doing or creating? And how can you connect with other people in the community through those things? And then, very importantly, who is gifted to lead, organize, which is different from who is paid staff. So, developing ministry can really elevate those leadership, organizing, creative gifts to the surface. Next, thinking about connections, relationships are key assets. So instead of thinking just about how many people you have, it's how are your people, what is the quality and scope of their relationships with one another and in the community? So thinking about taking stock of your personal connections in the community through your family, your friends, do you know people in your neighborhood? Do you participate in civic groups? Professional networks. So who do you know at your job, in your school? Have you served on a board? Have you been volunteering? Um, Also, what connections do you have with others through your interests and activities? So I am a sci-fi nerd, and the minute anybody just mentions Star Trek, I'm like, hey, I'm with you. Okay, we've have this instant bond, instant connection. So being a Star Trek nerd is actually an asset. And then finally, ministry partnerships or coalitions. So where does the church have a presence and who are they connected with through that? And Joy will talk about that more in fundraising. And then also really important to look at intangible assets. And yes, I realize that's ironic to say look at intangible assets because these are qualities which are essential for community ministry that shares God's love and justice in the community, but can't always be counted or checked off on a list. So that's looking at things like what's the reputation of your church in the community? What are you known for? Our small church was known for one thing was our barbecue, our annual fundraising barbecue, which got people from the community to serve as volunteers as well as paying for food. So that was one way that we had that connection. How is community ministry rooted in your church's mission and history? So maybe you're not doing a lot now, but can you go back and discover what your legacy is in your congregation or even your denomination? That could be a platform for developing ministry ideas and motivations. And then life experiences. So Joy and I use the phrase lived experience as being a valuable asset, maybe one of the most valuable in engaging with the community. So people who have been through hard times, people who have needed to access services, sometimes feel that they don't have much to bring to ministry, but their story is important.
So, just to comment on the assets, we do listening in congregations. We'll often ask a question of the congregation, like in focus groups, what do you do during your spare time? What do you do when you're not at work or at church or at school? And always turn up some interesting things that maybe weren't known about people. So found a cluster once of people who are doing woodworking, all different kinds of woodworking like crazy, each in their own basement, So I mean, what could be done with that? Also, I worked with a church once where everybody was like camping and hiking all over the place, and it was an older congregation. So I don't know, I guess I have stereotypes of older people maybe, but I wasn't expecting that. So that opened up some opportunities for starting a walking club. And they had property, so maybe they did some camping on their property too. Anyway, so another next step in developing community ministry would be to learn more about your community. So you're looking at, matching up the assets, interests, passions within your congregation with the needs and assets and issues in the community. So to do that, you need to do some listening, go out into the community. We teach, I don't know, we could probably teach 10 webinars on this and not cover all our material. So it's a big topic. And it is
Kind of
covered
passionate about it.
Real Connections. What's that? Anyway, sometimes somebody's going to hire us to sit in a room with people and talk for a whole day. Just like talk about a couple of topics. That would be fun. Anyway, so these are things you'd want to learn about in your community or on the church, so concerns that people have, what are the main needs? Who is struggling, isolated, or mistreated? I like that one. Makes people think about people, individuals. Looking for gaps. So like what issues are not being addressed. So we usually do some listening with nonprofits in the community when we do listening campaigns, listening projects with individual churches, and just listen to what people are saying about this is what we're doing. And we get a sense about this is going really well. This is really covered well in this community, but there are some glaring gaps here. And then looking at the community's assets as well. So looking at skills, qualities that people possess. What are those resources in the community? What do people value about their community? So it's not just filling a hole of the needs, but it's building up from the assets in the community. And then asking people about their dreams. So, in 10 years, I'd like this community to be blank, and have people fill in the blank. So what changes do people want to see in their community? And it's been really important for us as we've done work around the country. Sometimes we've worked in towns where they have it's a negative trajectory, a negative narrative about the community. And everybody kind of grabbed that and it's like, it's terrible. And the north end of town is getting worse and it's moving this way. Heard that in one of the places we worked in Kansas. So it's like, well, what, how could you flip that? Like, what good is happening that could spread? What assets do you have here? And looking for what God is doing. So how are people working together for good? I think Episcopalians are pretty open to working across denominational lines or faith lines. So I think talking to pastors and people in other churches is a good community listening strategy. Who else is working on issues you care about? And that can help you identify partners and what has been changing for the better. So generally when we talk about doing interviews or focus groups, it's 5 questions. You could pick out 5, maybe 6 or 7 in an interview. So you're not giving people a 10-page survey to fill out, and these are qualitative questions. So not yes or no questions, actually asking people to think about and reflect on the community. And sometimes people, when we do this, because we'll do some of the interviews when we go into a community and people will be like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And are kind of delighted to be asked, like, oh, nobody ever asked me what I thought about this issue. So, and do lots of community listening. So I think in a small church, I don't know, we usually say, get out there and try to interview 20 people, but maybe it's fewer in your community. And I think if you had 3 people who are willing to go out and have some conversations, maybe you had time during the day. So you can do interviews, you could do focus groups. That's a way to get at a number of people at one time, or do listening events. And that's covered in the Real Connections book too. That's a whole other topic. And And then strengthening your community connections. So as a church, getting to know people in the neighborhood, but also if your church already has community ministry, like if you had a dinner program once a week, relationships with people served by the church. So you're actually talking to people, finding out about them. What are their dreams for themselves in the community? And then I think another tip would be to connect with people outside your usual networks. So once worked with a church here locally. It was a good sized church, but everybody on the team, that the listening team, worked in the schools or had a lot of connections there. And I'm like, we really got to talk to people that aren't affiliated with the school somehow. So who else are we going to put on our list? So other churches, other nonprofits in the community. So, and then being a positive presence in the community. So sending somebody over to be at community meetings just to find out what happens, and you're there to listen and meet people. I think having a presence with local businesses can be really meaningful. And if you just keep showing up, people will notice. And maybe you want to send your most extroverted people on some of these jobs, taking part in local events. So crazy days. What is your fest? I should know the fests in Baraboo because I've done a couple projects with Father Dave. So your summer festival, whatever it is in your town.
The circus parade.
Yeah. And then being a prayerful, caring presence. So you guys have a prayer tent at that, right? Do you have a praying? Well, you have a place for families to get resources, water, and
Yeah, we do something with our county fair.
yeah, that's nice. It's like every time you show up, you're doing something nice for people. I feel like it helps reduce barriers and people will talk to you more. So, and then just touching briefly on building community partnerships, our webinar earlier this year was all about this. So I don't know, Father Dave, if there's a place where people can access that recording on PowerPoint.
Yes, that's out there on the Community Engagement Mission Action Team page on the
maybe
Diocese
put it
website.
in the chat here so people can see it. So yeah. So this was the one that we did in May. Man, it seems like it was 2 years ago or something. A lot has happened in this amount of time. So yeah, and this is what we talked about in that. So the benefits of partnering, options for partnering, how to find partners, and tips for great partnerships. I think it's one of the ways that small churches can have a larger ministry footprint is by looking creatively for partners. And I think in the community listening, if you meet people that you especially mesh with, so kind of in your style or way of doing things and in your values, they could be on maybe we could partner with them list. So the other thing is if you're in a small town, we've worked in settings where it's not just in your town kind of deal where you're looking for partners, or even doing community listening. So it could be 2 or 3 towns. It might be a county-wide sort of footprint. So it just depends on your context. So wanted to acknowledge that. We worked with a community where they decided to do their listening with the neighboring town and the neighboring church. And we had another situation like that where people felt like the contexts were so different for a variety of reasons that they couldn't do that. So anyway, but it's worth thinking about. And then here's that list of all these groups and people that you can partner with. In smaller communities, I find hospitals, like the hospital in Baraboo was at that community listening table, and they came with all these resources, and I'm like, man. Yeah, so just a list here. Chamber of Commerce, I think in smaller communities often plays a bigger role than they do. I think in metro areas, they're often more of a lobbying group for business interests, but Chamber of Commerce is maybe doing a little bit more creative marketing or partnering or events. Yeah, I often haven't thought a lot about businesses as partners, but particularly in working with youth, They can be valuable partners because they might be work sites or send some volunteers over. But also, I used to work for the Boys and Girls Club. Youth who don't have anything to do, sometimes they're up to no good, and they might not be a great presence in the town or community. So they're doing it kind of out of self. So yeah, just I would say the partnering piece is going to be a pretty important one for you as a smaller congregation.
Yeah. And just to highlight one thing about listening, which is that you may think if you're living in a small community, you'd be like, why do we need to do this? We've lived here all our life. We know everybody. But having information is different than having relationship. And so the purpose of listening and getting to know the community is not just to find out, the demographics but it's to hear people's perspectives. So maybe the surface level, but asking families about their history or tell me a story of a time that you went through struggle and who helped you. What do you think this town needs? Those are like Joy said, those are questions that people don't always get asked. So it's not just about filling in the blanks about your community, but it's really an opportunity to go deeper in relationship as well as knowledge. So,
Amen.
and that is a segue to this one because I find relationships to be more energizing than data. So we're going to talk about how do you energize the congregation for community ministry. So some suggestions. So we're going to talk about how you kind of shape or frame ministry, how you decide your focus for ministry in a way that is going to get the congregation excited about doing it. And the first thing is to start with, well, what are people excited about doing themselves? What are their gifts? What do they know how to do? What are they passionate about? And really lean into that. So it's where the needs of the community meet the gifts, the giftings and passions of the church. So also I'm thinking on a practical level about offering opportunities for community engagement that are a good fit for the congregation's time and energy. I was coaching a congregation that wanted to do an after-school project, but they kept having difficulty finding volunteers for this. And so I was asking about, okay, well, what do people in your congregation do? Well, we have a lot of professionals, who kind of work the 9 to 5 jobs. I said, when does the after school program start? 3 o'clock. I said, so maybe that's why you're having difficulty getting
Yeah.
volunteers. It's not because people don't care. It's just because they're at work. And then on the weekends, they don't want to go out because this is their only time to spend with their family. So thinking about availability, scheduling, and maybe how to fit ministry into the rhythms of church, rhythms that people already have in their church and family life. You also want to think about the stage of life. And, again, not to stereotype. But another church had to discontinue a ministry that they'd had for a long time because as their members aged, they didn't want to drive at night. So this was an evening dinner program, and so they realized that we need to bring the ministry to where our congregants are rather than kind of pressure them to do something that they are not able to do at this stage. Also important to learn from past experiences with ministry. So think about a time when your congregation got really behind something, maybe not even community ministry. What is something that they have done with excitement and really pulled off? A church that Joy and I were working with, they decided to do a community event. And they went big with this event, and Joy were like, wow, you guys are great at pulling off events and kind of like pulling in different resources to make it happen. Other churches, they want to be more spontaneous. They want to maybe have a more relaxed and So trying to get people to sign up for a ministry that's like everyday and regimented, that's going to be like pulling teeth. So learn from what's worked, learn from what hasn't worked. Really important to be specific as possible in your volunteer job descriptions. So instead of saying, hey, can we get somebody to help with this after school program? You can say, we need somebody to purchase snacks and deliver them to the church by this time, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That allows people to say, hey, I can't be there for the after school program, but I could do that piece of it.
Yeah.
Also make sure that people know that they're not going to be doing this forever necessarily. One of the most frustrating things is to sign up for a ministry and then have no idea what you're doing and when you're supposed to come back and who to contact. So even now that's something that's more of a challenge, I think, for larger churches. But even in smaller churches, we can assume that people just sort of know what to do and when to show up it really helps to put it into writing. Also make it easy to get started. Um, so I'm the kind of person, true confessions, who really does not pay attention to announcements. My mind is like, woo. I'm also the kind of person that often loses the bulletin. So if there's a volunteer, I'm always like, okay, so what's happening? And who do I contact about this? So giving people information in like 3 or 4 different ways about what they can do and when and where and who to contact. Just over communicate and make it really easy. Don't make them go through a 3-page form in order to become a volunteer. And really important, if somebody says they're interested, if somebody says yes to you, follow up right away. Because otherwise people feel like, oh, I got so excited about doing this thing, but then it's been a couple months and I guess we really weren't that serious about it. So how do
We've got
Hmm?
about 7 minutes.
Okay.
So
So how do you get people to get involved? Some tips, invite people personally. Again, not just put out a general, but say, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. Offer simple ways to dip a toe in a service, so don't expect people to make too big of a jump. Encourage people to serve with their friends. That makes them more complicated, and show them how bringing snacks matters in God's plan of lifting up the youth in the community. All right. So, Joy talks about right from the very beginning, you were talking about fostering a culture of yes in the church. So sometimes the best ministry is not top down. It's not about here's a program or here's an opportunity and we want to get you to do what we have already planned to do. Sometimes it's about lifting up the ministry gifts and capacities and ideas from the people. That takes longer sometimes. It feels more messy. And if you give people permission to try something new, you will be amazed at where this goes. And then 2 words, start somewhere. The best way to get people going is to do something. Action is oxygen if you're trying to light a fire. So do something. Start somewhere.
So I'll just touch lightly on this. So you may well need to look at resources outside of your church. So probably money, in-kind donations, also people. So that's a key part of partnership would be, maybe you actually don't have enough volunteers in your church who could work on a project that you'd like to do, but building some partnerships, going out into the community and talking about it and encouraging people to sign up might get you the people that you need. So whenever you're talking to people about giving, whatever it is, you're talking about the results that you hope to get, the need in the community that you're addressing, be able to talk about what you're doing in some level of specificity and how it's unique. And also who you're partnering with. So if you're applying for a grant proposal, answering these questions would get you almost everything you need to write up a proposal. But a lot of times if I'm going to service clubs or talk to a business or something, just making a 1-pager or a 2-pager answering those questions is what Because that's what people are wondering about. So you might also talk to individuals outside your church about giving or supporting the ministry, volunteering, giving money or in-kind gifts. They might give because they have a historical connect with the church. Man, these people look really serious. They look like my Swedish Lutheran forebears in all the photos when they're sitting in church. I used to send the kids to Saturday school and they had to wear their suits and stuff to learn about the Bible. So the people might give because they really care a lot about the issues. So if you're working on food insecurity at your church with some partners, might be individuals in the community that would give you some money for that. Or they have a personal connection with someone who was involved. So the main reason people give charitably is because someone they know asked them. Someone they know cares about the issue and asks them to give. Well, and think about the people that your church members know, where do they work? What are their community affiliations? So, are they engaged with civic clubs, associations? Are they alumni of the school in the area, sitting on boards? Who's in their network? So that makes a huge difference when you're approaching for partnership or funding or in-kind gifts. Yeah, so, and these are some examples of kinds of funders. And you just never know until you ask where people are connected. So you might think you know everything about your church members if you don't have a lot of church members, but you might be surprised. So grant funding sources could include private foundations or family foundations. Community foundations both raise money and give it away. So we saw the Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin. And then corporate foundations, every community, most communities have a Walmart, and you should always ask Walmart for funding. So look at their local community funding, and they have it's a breadth of kinds of causes they support, and they'll give up to $5,000 from each location. So if you have 3 Walmarts in your area, you could ask each one for money. And I also suggest your local bank. So if you're looking for money for, I don't know, a small amount of money to do an event or buy supplies for a program or something, or some food, local banks are often a good bet. Yeah, so here's just some ideas for you. I don't know, your Chamber of Commerce might give you money for something. The Bar Association is, other professional associations. I don't know if asking other churches for money is a good idea right now or not, but people are waiting to see how their fall pledging comes out. And then fundraising events. So this is the belly dancing fundraiser that Heidi found. It's in Hudson, Massachusetts. Anyway, that's kind of a
I
fun
had to
one.
put that in.
And one in Malibu at St. Aidan's Episcopal Church. I find like small churches are often better at doing fundraising events. Well, if you're in a smaller community, it's like maybe the only thing going on if you do it at the right time of the year. So it's a social event, and getting in-kind donations for this kind of stuff is important. So you might get the food donated or beverages or space. If you need a venue, you could talk to somebody about giving it to you for free or for cheap. So yeah. So hopefully this has been encouraging for you. We want small churches to really shine and excel, and you have a lot to contribute. You want to say anything here at the end, Heidi?
Just no, I think we covered it. I would love to know what people feel like their biggest challenge is in community ministry. I would love to hear what ideas people have had, but they thought that, oh, that we can't do this. The power of dreaming in a church, the power of asking people, if we could do anything to bring this community closer to God's ideal, to God's dream, what would you want to be part of? And I've seen that question just bring some really amazing results. And I think God delights in taking situations that, in context that nobody thinks is going to really amount to much, and then just turning that on its head. So I just encourage you to dream.
Well, thank you very much. Louise, Jan, do you have any questions to start with?
Not so much question, but the comment about the aging populations and people not wanting to go out at night, that really is a restricting, we have found for both of the parishes that we serve. So I guess we're looking at, we've had discussions about doing things during the day, having a lunch, more as a not community, but as a church event, and then maybe broadening it to the community. But start with the church.
Yeah.
Have like a soup and game lunch.
Yeah, I
Really
love that.
fun, you know,
Oh
and
my goodness, that sounds great. And I think that starting with what you would enjoy doing and then thinking, oh, well, this has been great. Who can we invite? So a lot of it is about having what I call a +1 mentality. So, oh, okay, well, we're doing this. I'm going to a baseball game. Now the single mom down in my neighborhood has a son who might like to go with our son, so that's going to be our +1. Who would we have had so much fun playing Bunko? Is that the name of the game? Yeah, my mother-in-law loves that one. Like say, oh, I know somebody else who loves Bunko, and so that would be the natural person to invite to this.
And actually, Louise, at Trinity, we've just we started a Bible study last summer that's different than anything we've done. We haven't done anything quite this way before, but we have a 2-hour Bible study in the evening, and we start by just having dinner together. And so we got some soup from Cisco, and somebody heats it up, and then we just have a dinner, and a couple of people bring a dish, but it's not like necessary that they do that. And then when all of the SNAP benefit stuff started this fall, we said, like we want to just invite anybody that needs a meal. So we just changed the name of that, called it our community dinner, and we still have Bible study after. And we just give a warning 15 minutes before we start Bible study that we're going to do it, and it's totally optional, and people are welcome to stay, they're welcome to leave, and we've had really about 10 extra who've come to that the last several weeks, which is great because we want to have some people, but we also have a limited amount of capacity, so we don't want it to get too big too fast.
Oh, I'm so glad you don't make people participate in the Bible study before they eat. That's just obnoxious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. We're not that flavor here.
And
so we want to.
I like that they're saying, "Warning: Father Dave will start talking about the Bible
That's right.
in 15 minutes. Brace yourselves."
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think if your congregation has a real heart for kids, and you have people available during the day, that's a great match. So I've seen a lot of cool things happen with people over a certain age. Either volunteering in a school partnership, so spending time reading to kids or tutoring them.
Adopt a grandma.
Yeah. A lot of schools have an organized program for that kind of thing. Or also like sharing their hobbies and history as a person, So, another stereotype of old people is that we don't like to run around a lot, That said, I worked with a church where the gym program was run by people over a certain age and they were great at it. But maybe it's like baking cookies, maybe it's learning how to knit, maybe it's painting, or outdoor activities like going fishing, like every kid in Wisconsin needs to go fishing, right? So in Minnesota, we say 90% of the kids in Minnesota go fishing in the summer. And the response to that is, what's wrong with the other 3%? Yeah. Anyway, so doing that kind of thing, or I don't know, working on cars.
Mhm.
But again, it's like taking stock of the gifts and interests of people. And
And I think also starting with the assumption that everyone has a gift to bring, to share with others. And so I'm kind of passionate about encouraging creativity around ideas for how people can give back when they are shut in, if they have a disability. My daughter has a physical disability, so that's really moved the location, the locus of a lot of our family activities to the home because it's hard to go out. So how can you like bring ministry opportunities to people where they are? I think a lot of a lot of times when people think about volunteering, they think about doing or planning an event. But yet, one of the gifts that's often goes underused is the gift of encouragement, the gift of prayer. And I have just heard so many stories um, from my church. There's a church that has a card ministry. So they just send birthday cards to people who are in the senior home, or they send thank you cards to teachers at the local school, or anytime they know that somebody's kind of going through a rough time, they send them a note, and that is a powerful gift. So the gift of encouragement, the gift of prayer. I'll tell you something, people in nonprofits who are really on the front lines of some really tough stuff, if you just ask them, hey, we have a prayer team. We want to support people who are, really serving our community. So how can we pray for you? And they could even call with emergency. When I was working in a nonprofit with at-risk families, the idea of having somebody that I could call and say, okay, I need someone to pray right now because so-and-so just had to go to the hospital because of domestic violence. So, or, telling an AA group, I'm going to pray for you. I have no experience with recovery, but my friend and we're going to call each other on the phone every weekend and we're going to pray for your
yep.
recovery group. So there's so many creative ways but it kind of does start with the asset exploration.
Yeah, I think so.
And
I
then
want to,
it's mindset.
Other
yeah,
questions?
I want to just point out something that you said sort of briefly in passing, but I'd love for you to talk a little more about it. So one thing you said was that part of the process of like deciding what to do in a new community ministry, like you actually said in there briefly, like you could go out and ask 20 people in your community kind of what do you want to see happen in your community, kind of ask everybody the same questions
Yeah.
and really just try to see what they say, whether anything that they say sort of lines up with assets that you've already identified in your congregation, either whether
That's what
that's,
you're looking for. It's like
need you're passionate about or gifts that you have, these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And in the Bible it says righteousness and peace kiss each other. And I think it's looking for the sweet spot of community issues and gifting of your church, kissing each other. You want them to fit together. Yeah, I feel like 20 is a great number. You do want to ask everyone the same questions. And we'll assign numerical value, like say things like, it's not a longitudinal study or something done by a university, but it's like, we talked to 20 people and 15 of them said there's basically nothing for middle school kids to do in this community. And this is what's happening as a result. Or, we're seeing more and more families experience, more month than money at the end of the month. They got too much months for their money to cover. So there's are way increased number of people going to a food shelf asking for help. So anyway, and then sometimes there's subtext too. So one place we went, a lot of the needs that people talked about weren't that surprising. but we did focus groups with service providers and people didn't know each other. It's like they're working in a community of like, what
Mm.
is it? It's less than 50,000 people. And they're working not very far apart in the community, and they didn't know about the services that in the same field, we're all working with people experiencing homelessness. And so one of the findings was people here don't work together. Is there a way to get people together for lunch and a conversation and encouragement, anyway.
Something, I mean, one of the most powerful things that a group of 3 people could do would be to bring a dozen other people who care about the same thing into a room and talk together.
Whether they're from your church or not, or from your faith or
Exactly.
not, just
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
that care about this thing.
Yeah. Building.
We're interested in teams forming of church members and then people who don't attend your church, just who are interested in,
Mhm.
because they live in the neighborhood or they live in a neighboring town and they want to see.
Yeah.
And this is a way too that you can, because when I work with young adults, they always want to go on the computer and hit a couple of buttons and get all the data. But that's old by the time it hits this website. So talking to people will tell you what's coming. They know people who work in schools can see what's coming. So the new groups of immigrants that are coming, listening here in Minneapolis to people in schools talk about what's happening to their Somali students and their families right now with ISIS presence in our community. So that's the kind of up to the minute kind of information and ideas that you can get by talking to people. We're old school that way.
We like, I think one of the blinders that people sometimes have about ministry is thinking that if ministry equals meeting somebody's need, like taking care of somebody, and I think that so many social issues are linked with isolation, linked with mental health, linked with people feeling like they're worthless. And so to engage people's gifts, instead of not just saying like, here's a ham, but just say, oh, I heard that you're a really good cook. Can you cook this ham and bring it to our feeding ministry? So there's a big difference there, because then that brings people. So always trying to amplify gifts, amplify connections, amplify collaboration. Those are the things that small churches especially can excel at, that can lead to impactful ministry. And, putting everything in.
I just had this picture, Heidi, of someone driving on the street and throwing hams out the window at people.
Oh, oh yeah. Well, that's actually the term drive-by hamming comes from when my husband and I were working in a subsidized housing community, and a church with so much heart came, and that's what they did. They would knock on the door and say, "Here's a ham." Well, they didn't really know, because they didn't talk to people ahead of time. They didn't know that like a good chunk of the people who lived there were Muslim immigrant. So
makes a great impression.
yeah.
One community we worked in, there are a lot of Latino people in the area, and they asked them what they wanted for their holiday food baskets, and it wasn't a turkey. So they got supplies together to make tamales, which can be expensive for a family to buy. So yeah, that's what they wanted. Anyway, so that was out of a conversation that somebody had.
Yeah, and I think that's a great illustration, Joy, that one thing to expect when you start leaning into listening and asset exploration for community ministry is you're going to be surprised. It's you're definitely going to learn things and run across opportunities and ideas that you did not see coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why we like doing this. It's always interesting and
Surprised. Yeah.
amazing and surprising. So
Well, very good. Thank you, Joy and Heidi, for presenting and sharing this with us. And look forward to getting it up online and having people look at it after the fact. And yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to do some more work together again sometime soon.
Yeah, we love that.
Sounds
All
great.
right.
This was
Appreciate
fun.
you
Nice to
all.
meet you all.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
See you later.
Good night.